everybody. It's Monday. Time for Lunch and Learn Live. How was your weekend, Miss Carissa?
It was very delightful. I don't know about the weather for you in Texas, but it was gorgeous here in New York. I got to beach it, so I got those beautiful negative ions from the beach, and it was really nice.
That's really awesome.
How was yours?
The weather here is the weather in northern Texas has been the weather in northern Texas. You never know what to expect. So lots of storms lately.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're almost through the stormy season. Well, gosh, I guess we didn't talk since the last one. Well, the last weekend we had that really big tornado with all those people who died and stuff. That was, I actually drove right past there this morning after I dropped my husband off at the airport. So yeah, it was hits home sometimes.
Yeah, that's really heartbreaking.
So, but this weekend was a good weekend. Actually, the end of my sons had a dirt bike race, and so we did that. And then the end of last week, I was at the biohacking conference.
I know, that's so exciting.
Yeah, it was. So you guys, I'm not big into like what's the latest fad and all of that, but the conference was right in my backyard here in Dallas, and I'm like, let's go see. There's always going to be something else to learn. So I made myself available and headed on down to Dallas and got to check out quite a few things and see a lot of colleagues and people I know and stuff. So that was probably the best part for sure.
Well, you got to see Dr. Mercola.
Yes, I did. Dr. Mercola spoke. That was awesome. So anybody know who Dr. Mercola is? Those of you in the chat box. So if you do, first of all, say hello. I know that there's people watching. So say hello. Let us know that you're watching. And so I do love Dr. Mercola. It doesn't mean I agree with every single thing that he promotes or says or anything like that. But I certainly love and respect him as a professional and someone who is really looking at the science of things. And I don't mean science in some of the silly science definition that we use sometimes in this day and age, but actually looking at the data and what's happening with people and all that. Hello, Miss Janine. Glad to have you here. So yeah, it was funny. I don't know how many of our people know who Dave Asprey is, right? But Dave Asprey is the father of the biohacking movement. And, biohacking is essentially about optimizing your health. And for me, there's a little bit of uneasiness because sometimes that optimizing your health comes with a really heavy reliance on technology. And
see, I didn't know that. I was like, so for me or anyone, I mean, I'm kind of new to it. I do recognize, like you said, like it involves optimizing your biology. I always thought it was like through methods like diet and I guess technology, but more like supplements and lifestyle changes. So you're saying like it's also really highlighted on technology too?
I think it's a combination of a lot of different things, right? I think there is some emphasis for sure on diet. Like it was the only time I've ever been at a conference and I could like eat the food because the food that they had the hotel prepare was actually food that was edible. Now, I took a picture of my first day's dinner and our first day's lunch and sent it to my family because it wasn't something that I would eat personally, but I shared it with someone else at the table and ate the vegetables. But it was certainly clean food, like any of their meats that they serve were all, organic, grass-fed, and the fish was wild. There wasn't any chemicals, there weren't any oils, there weren't any of that in the foods that they prepared there, which was really interesting. But kind of going back to your question. So yeah, I mean, biohacking doesn't have to involve technology, right? It could involve going outside and getting connected to the ground and that stuff. But I think sometimes too, people are in the space, people are using different things like peptides, which are, synthetic injectables in some cases, not all, or sometimes the hormone replacement therapy or things like that, which aren't things, Carissa, that we use in our practice because we're really back to basics.
Yeah.
I do have to admit that, with all of these conferences, there's always a wonderful shopping zone, right? Where you can walk around and see lots of cool, innovative products and things like that. And, I think it's really easy to get sucked into the glitz and the glamour and all of that. But at the end of the day, a lot of these things just don't test well. So you guys who are listening, if you don't know, like we use a lot of kinesiologic testing in our practice. You guys, you can, when you learn to use kinesiology, which every single one of you can do. So stay tuned for our training classes, right? But every single one of you can do that. You actually have the power in your hand to really discern what is it that's going to work, what's not going to work, what really is what it says it is, and what's not. I mean, they had a product that was headlining, and so it's their main sponsor product, and I'm not going to go through company names and things like that because that's not appropriate here. But main sponsor product, and even being up on stage and them saying, case studies and research. And I went over and I got a sample of the product and I brought it home and I tested it, and it tests awful. And so I'm scratching my head and I'm saying, my gosh, so there's all of these things happening, but you guys, we've got to come back to the energetics of things and whether or not they're actually aligned with the human body, right? Because we know from pharmaceuticals that we can change a blood marker. We can change a blood marker with medication. It doesn't mean that the body still isn't dealing with that issue just because we changed a blood marker. And so it's no different with all of these things. One bottle of this product, a 30-day supply, by the way, was $189. Not only did it contain magnesium stearate, but I even kind of did a test with removing magnesium stearate, and it still tested terrible. But I got to tell you, they were selling stuff like left and right, which is, so we've got to be careful, and especially in this day and age where everyone's educated via social media, right? It's like the 30-second reel education clips, and that's where people are getting their information. Like nothing becomes popular until it hits TikTok or Instagram. But
very true. I don't even think many people know what magnesium stearate is.
Oh yeah. Well, if you don't know what magnesium stearate is, thank you. It is what's called an excipient. It is something that a lot of product manufacturers use in their products. It's a flow agent, so that as it goes through the capsule machine, they can produce a lot more, a lot faster. Unfortunately, even though it's FDA or USDA generally recognized as safe, right? It's actually not shown to be safe over the long term. Yet you will find that, and gosh, I would probably, don't quote me on this because I don't know the exact number, but it's probably in about 90% of supplements. I think we're seeing a decrease in the amount of companies that use magnesium stearate as the awareness grows, but it's still in so many of the products, especially when companies are concerned about just processing it through and selling it, versus anything else. So we've really got to be conscious consumers, because I can tell you people were lined up to go buy this product after the presentation. And I'm like, I'm going to keep my $189 in my pocket because this just does not test well, but it certainly spurs the conversation. Like, how can we regenerate and how can we promote our stem cells in other ways outside of just this, supplement that doesn't test well? But there were a lot of things out there that there were some good things. I brought Prana Living makes pancakes. They were there and they had their pancakes there, and they're like buckwheat pancakes, and they've got some mushrooms in them. We tested them. They tested really well. They had ones for like brain and memory and ones for energy and vitality. So I, bought a couple bags for the kids. There was another company there called Elements. It's an Ayurvedic chocolate company. They make raw chocolate bars they're made with honey. Oh my gosh, they were divine. I did buy a couple chocolate bars for sure. And they had a chai protein powder that I brought too. So you've just got to be, you've got to be discerning as to what it is that you're actually purchasing. And not everybody knows everything. That's why we've got to kind of educate ourselves in all different areas. You know, if you take like Dave Asprey, what's Dave Asprey's claim to fame?
Coffee, right? You said he was the king of
Coffee,
coffee.
right? So we're at this conference. Everybody's drinking coffee left and right, everywhere. And you guys
Good
know,
for my health.
yeah, you guys know how I feel about coffee. You know, from there's two sides to the research. Of course, people are like, "Oh, the antioxidants are amazing," but we know the downside of the caffeine, and the flip side of it is most coffee is pure garbage. It is one of the highest pesticide-ridden crops that are produced, right? And the beneficial parts of it, right? A lot of times, by the time that cup of coffee actually hits your mouth, all of those benefits are essentially gone, right? Because the coffee is rancid. A lot of times coffee is high in mold. Like, I think the way the coffee bean is, how it got that curve, like there's mold that is inside there. I mean, what I think Dave Asprey does, and I haven't researched his coffee, so don't quote me, but I think what he does is they remineralize it. Okay, so they're adding extra minerals to it, so you're getting in extra minerals. And I do think they do test for mold and stuff. So in that sense, you know, it's cleaner, right? But it's still coffee with lots of caffeine. And I remember, like, I think it was the first day he was up on stage and he made a side pass comment, and he was like, "Yes, coffee, it's like the key to longevity." And I'm like chuckling to myself and looking around the room being like, am I the only weirdo here? Because, you know, they're giving away free coffee. So everyone's got a cup of coffee in their hand. And don't get me wrong, I did try the coffee because I've never tried his coffee. I did not like the coffee, and my stomach was not very happy with the coffee either. But I had to do it because I was there and I wanted to check it out and see what the hype was. But there were other speakers there, a lot of other speakers. And what I really came to love and respect about Dave Asprey and the biohacking conference is that he didn't just bring in speakers that agreed with him. He brought in people that blatantly disagreed with him. And I really like that, you guys, because, you know, the truth is, in this space of health, we know really like nothing. We're really still learning and exploring and understanding. And you can take people who know a lot and they still have conflicting views, right? Because we really don't know everything. And to be quite honest, all of our bodies are so individually different that the way things work for one person may not work the same for somebody else. But, you know, I'll tell you, I always have the story. So one of my mentors, what he did for fun is he had a friend who worked in the morgue, and he'd go with his friend when he's on his shift and he'd watch him do the autopsies. And from all of those autopsies, they always knew precisely who the coffee drinkers were based on their adrenal glands. And so I always have that visual in my head. And you guys, I know Premier Research Lab sells coffee, right? And their coffee that they sell is really not, yes, it is drinkable, 100% drinkable. It's probably the best and safest coffee you can drink for sure. But it is also intended for enemas more than it is intended for drinking, right? So keep that in mind. But anyway, so Dr. Mercola, coming back to Dr. Mercola. So he gets onto stage and he brings this garbage bag with him. And, you know, he's talking about all the garbage essentially that we are exposed to in our environment and what's happening with our health. And he says, you know, one of the number one things that's going in the garbage, he's like, do you want to guess what that is? And so he's standing here with his big black garbage bag, and he picks up one of those cups of coffee and he says, I'm sorry, Dave, but one of the biggest things that belongs in this garbage bag is this coffee. And he takes that coffee, dumps it into the garbage bag, dumps the cup into the garbage bag, and the crowd goes like silent. Like you hear people gasp, right? And then you hear some people cheer, and I'm like, oh gosh, I'm not alone. Thank goodness, right? But you hear the gasping and you hear the cheering. And I'm just kind of sitting there like chuckling, like it was bold and courageous. And he was, you know, you juxtapose two different beliefs and two different opinions and two different versions from two different very healthy people, right? Like Dr. Mercola is, I mean, the man looks amazing. You know, he is in amazing shape and condition. And then Dave Asprey, who obviously is in amazing shape and condition. You look at those two different worlds, and it's really, really fascinating. So I thought that was good. There were a couple others, by the way, like I believe so there was another guy, he was the creator of the Viome blood test, who also he was a no on caffeine, and he was also, you know, Dave Asprey is much more carnivore, and this other guy was vegan, right?
Well, I think that's so interesting because that's, for me, I
Really
think that's
interesting.
where I conflict.
Yes. Well, and this is something I'm exploring too, is and it's always something that I'm looking at. It's like, how can there be really healthy here and really healthy here, and their diets be so dramatically diverse? But the question is, are they really? When you start to think about, are they really? So it's fascinating stuff that just I kind of mull over all the time. This is what I do for fun, think about this stuff. But yeah, even like Brian Johnson. So if you guys know who Brian Johnson is, he's this guy who is on the quest to like never age, right? He's going to live forever. That's his thing. And if you see the man, I think he's in his, I think he's 46 or 47, and he looks like he's like 15, you know, but he was interviewed, and he is also 100% vegan, doesn't do any animal products. And he's aging in a much, I don't remember what the numbers were. I think he was like 0.3 or 0.4. And I think Dave Asprey was like 0.6 or 0.7 in the amount of years they're aging. So by the way, we're all, that's less than one. So their age is much lower than the general population's age as they're aging over time. But, so totally, completely diets, and they're still both really healthy with really healthy markers. So it has you really think like maybe there is not one specific way, but what are the commonalities, right? Neither of them are eating any processed food. Neither of them are eating, adulterated oils. Neither of them are spending their days stressed out, right? Both of them are connecting to the ground and getting grounded. They're both really aware of EMFs. So these are all like the key foundational things. Even Dr. Mercola is in the same thing. Now take somebody like Dr. Mercola. I don't know if anybody follows Dr. Mercola. I got a lot of respect for the man, but for a long while he was very, very geared toward carnivore, like the carnivore diet. And in recent times, he's come up and he said, you guys, I'm wrong. You know what? We need carbohydrates. We need carbohydrates. And I believe I heard him in an interview once talk about how he eats rice now, which is like, woo,
mind blowing for him. Yeah.
180 degrees, right? So you guys, even the people who are health gurus are still trying to figure out these things. So I know a lot of our clients, they're confused. Well, but so is we're on the cutting edge of things. And part of the issue is we live in a society that's so toxic on so many different levels, the one thing I was thinking about this morning too, had a long car ride. My husband's flight got canceled. He was supposed to fly to New York last night. All the flights were canceled because of the storms. So I had to take him early this morning. But as I'm sitting in the car driving and I'm thinking about, so one of the other speakers that was there was Dr. Joe Dispenza. And if you guys don't know Dr. Joe Dispenza, I've got so much respect for this man, but he takes a very scientific approach. They've used brain scans and brain studies. And yes, Joe Dispenza's thing is meditation. And it's like the highest level meditation that you can think of. But they have documented, like literally he's documented what happens in the brain and how it happens. And stories. So he's got a documentary that is going to be playing. He's got a documentary that's going to be playing for free. I think it's the 11th or the 15th of June. It's starting. We'll have to put it in the group. But you guys, it's like now we just talked about all this stuff about diet and all the mismatch in diet. But Joe Dispenza over here, by the way, who used to he shared that when he hurt his back, and if nobody knows Dr. Joe Dispenza's story, it's like he was told that he was essentially, they needed to reconstruct his entire back and he probably still wouldn't walk again. And he actually healed himself through his meditation. He was determined to figure that out. And he was one of those people. He was eating a plant-based diet, and he was doing all of those right things, but that wasn't going to be what was going to heal his back. And so you look at someone like Joe Dispenza and the work that he's doing, and people are having spontaneous healings of cancer and autoimmune diseases and all of these different illnesses and ailments, skin rashes, pain. I mean, he healed his back, right? And we have to start to ask ourselves, like, wow, like we really need to start expanding our ideas of how the body heals and what is necessary. Janine, it's Dispenza, Dispenza. He's got an amazing book. I am sure we've recommended it. It's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. I think we recommend it to just about all of our clients. But Breaking the Habit of Being Himself is one of his other books. His most recent book is called Supernatural. It goes into a little bit more of his different meditations, but Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself is probably the foundational place to start. But it's really fascinating. So you bring all of these things together, and the thing that strikes me, and the one kind of the summation that I walked away with in my brain is, like, that's totally natural. We're not injecting ourselves with anything. We're not doing all of that. Like changing your diet, getting rid of the toxins, all of that is part of our body's natural way of being, right? What are we doing when we're meditating at that level of Joe Dispenza is we are literally increasing our vibrational resonance. So it's all about frequency. It all comes down to that frequency. When we do your kinesiologic testing, what are we doing? We're tapping into the frequencies at the organs, glands, and systems of the body. But that's all that he's doing essentially, right? Is they're bringing through the frequencies, and according to Joe, it's like they're tapping into vibrations that are just outside of what's inside the human being. And that is what shifts everything.
So Dr. Joe Dispenza is awesome. I think, Janine, if you're still on here, I'm pretty sure he made his way into that documentary she recommended yesterday, Heal.
Oh, I think so. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure he's in
there.
He's got to be in there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's on there. And I wanted to ask you too, I know we only have a few minutes, but I know you were talking to me, and I think this is kind of great to go into how the words mean energy.
Oh, yeah. Right? Yeah.
You saw that Don't Die shirt.
Yeah. Well, let's think about it, you guys, too, right? So one of the things I had to do as I was going through, like, the selling room, was I had to differentiate when I was testing products. I had to differentiate, like, is it the product itself that tests off, or is it the logo on it that tests off? You'd be so surprised. So here I am, I'm thinking about, like, Dave Asprey. He's this I'm guessing billionaire, right? From what it is that he does. And I look at the products, and most of those logos are like, they test off, right? So they have an energetic frequency that is repelling versus coming in. But I think it's the name. I think it's his name that draws people in more so than that. Imagine if they had actually good, powerful logos, it'd be a whole different story. But yeah, the words, so everything's vibration, of everything is frequency. So you guys, I was sharing with Carissa before. So one of the things, it got hard for me to listen in to the interview that Dave Asprey was doing with Brian Johnson, because Brian Johnson was wearing this shirt, by the way, that said, "Don't die." Now, you guys, for those of you who are in our Mindset Breakthrough program, you already know that the minute you put the negative on something, your brain can't register it.
Yeah.
Well, we're all looking at that "Don't Die" shirt, which is, that's what he wants. But he's literally wearing a "Don't Die" shirt. Energetically, that's totally impacting his body, right? Now, he's doing all these other things to counterbalance it. I get that. But also us, as we're all reading that, your brain doesn't register don't die. Your brain registers the do die.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, wow, fascinating stuff. Imagine if these guys started to bring the world of energetics into their what they do and their understanding, like that could be multiple fold. There was Jim Quick, who I love Jim Quick as well. So Jim Quick is he's really a brain guy, brain, memory, learning. He was, when he was little, he had a traumatic brain injury, and it's Quick, you guys, KWIK. He had a traumatic brain injury. And so he had a learning disability based upon his traumatic brain injury. And, when he was in school, there was a teacher who said at one point, hey, don't leave that kid alone. He's the one with the broken brain. Right. So now imagine, go back to our breakthrough coaching work, you guys, go to the mindset work. Imagine what that does. Right. So he had to work through that, but his whole life has become about, teaching people how to have optimal performance, optimal brain health, all of that. And now he was also wearing a shirt. Okay. But his shirt said focus. So get the difference between Brian Johnson's shirt that said don't die and then Jim Quick's shirt that said focus. Right. So it's certainly another whole thing for us to consider and think of. I mean, you guys, there's so much of this stuff. I can tell you, I love this stuff. This is why I do what I do. I totally love this stuff. And it's so fascinating because everyone has their own special takes and things like that. But a lot of the messages are very common. There's a lot of things with all the messages that are common, right? Make sure you get good sleep, avoid processed foods, eat as clean as you can, clean, organic, keep your air clean, keep your water clean, and keep your mind essentially clean and resonating at that higher level. And it's like those are the keys right there. Easier said than done in this day and age, but I don't know. What do you think about all that, Miss Carissa?
Well, I think it's amazing, and I certainly believe in it, and I see it with myself. Mm-hmm. I guess I just really lacked the knowledge with the technology part of it. So I wanted to ask, and for anyone watching too, for anyone that's really new, where would be the best place to learn more than the introduction that you've given us, which is like phenomenal. Because now I just want to like go to a podcast or read a book or do something else.
Well, I think, Carissa, we need to move our podcast along and get although this is kind of like our podcast. Our Lunch and Learn Live is kind of like our little podcast here.
We just need a little more time to really go through it then.
Yeah, I know half an hour doesn't give us enough time to touch on things. But what we want to do here, the purpose and intention of the Lunch and Learn Live is to start to give you things, to start to spark that curiosity, to spark that interest, and to spark those conversations, and to come away with something. Like if you're here with us for the half an hour listening to the Lunch and Learn Live, pick one thing that you want to take a look at, right? Like Janine, your one thing might be, go find a YouTube meditation from Joe Dispenza and start incorporating that into your daily routine, right?
There's great ones. I do them.
Yeah. For some others of you, it might be like, oh gosh, you know what? Maybe there's more processed food in my diet than I realized. I'll share with you guys. I know we're going to run over and I got to go grab Mia from camp after we're done here. But, I'm in this space. So my sons, they want to ride dirt bikes competitively. Motocross is one of the most physically rigorous and intense. I mean, you think they're just riding around on the thing, but what it takes, those bikes weigh as much as they do. What it takes is a lot, right? And so my son is 16 now. And, prior to that, he wasn't as intense into his goals, but B, it's like he was pre-puberty, right? And now that he's hit puberty, all of these things he's got to start to really do things differently. And he's got to start to focus in on his diet, on his nutrition. I mean, it's different for him. I'm trying to get the kid to make sure he eats 4,000 calories a day because he's training so hard. Whereas many of us, we're like on the other side of the spectrum. How do we make sure we're not eating 4,000 calories?
Yeah.
You know, how do I make sure that he's getting, it's the same thing. I actually, I have a coach now that's working with him because you guys, we can't do it alone. We need assistance and support. We need the outside eyes. And the truth is I can't help my family because they're my family.
Yeah.
You know how that goes, right? Mm-hmm. So we have a team to now support the boys to make sure that they're getting everything that they need and they're working through. But it certainly has me also start to look at things differently in the sense that, again, what my body needs is different than what my boys' bodies needs as they're in training, right? What your body needs for whatever you're going through, what's happening in your life is different than somebody else's. The same thing for our rest and our hydration and our sleep and all of that. So it really is about putting all the different pieces together, but it's got to be individualized. If we're not individualizing it, it doesn't make a difference. And in another really key thing, we can talk more about the performance stuff maybe next week, but another key thing is that tracking. It's so important that we're tracking. I know a lot of our clients, they don't like to use their food diaries. My son, it's like pulling teeth. I get it. But that's where we actually see what's going on and we see like what's happening for people. So, maybe your takeaway from today's call is, okay, let me get really diligent about writing down if you're a client of ours, you use your Practice Better portal to track all of your food. If you're not, there's plenty of apps out there where you can actually go in and do that. So all important things, you guys, all important things. So, all right. I think we covered a lot of different things today.
If anyone has any questions, just reach out.
Yeah, drop them in, guys. And even if you're watching this later on, drop them in the comments box. We try to be really diligent about making sure that we always reply to the comments that come up in social media. So, all right, with that, everyone, we will talk to you all soon. Hi, Susan. Glad to see you here. I was just thinking about you before we got on. All right, loves. We'll talk to you all soon. Have a good week. See you next Monday. Bye.